This episode of the Totally Rad Show is brought to you by Carbonite, Hollywood's biggest battle on the big screen, film versus digital. Today we check out the documentary Side by Side.
Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad Show.
Today in movies, we're talking about the documentary Side by Side, which is out now in the various VOD, video on demand services. Actually, I believe it is playing in theaters limitedly as well. It's a documentary produced by Keanu Reeves, and it's about digital versus film. And it's been something we've, as you mentioned on Monday, we've talked about digital video and its implications on the show here and there. But this really delves deep into the history of film, the history of digital, the comparison of digital photography versus photography on film. And then in the later parts of the documentary, it gets into like very interesting subject matter. Archiving and things like that. I think in large part, if you are a cinephile or if you're a filmmaker or student or what have you, and I'm sure many of you are who watch the show, it's a little bit more of a refresher course in very recent history, though interesting, especially because there's many interviews conducted with James Cameron.
Everybody who's anybody is
Martin
in this
Scorsese
thing.
and even smaller
a lot of DPs, which
yeah.
is nice, and a lot of smaller filmmakers.
Yeah. Like even film students, really interesting, who are now growing up in the technology. It even covers editing on film versus digitally. It really covers digital versus film. So, what did you guys think? Alex,
That's a very open question.
Interestingly enough, there was no side-by-side comparison of the two.
Despite the title.
Yeah.
There was in the color correct. Remember, there was a moment where you literally did go side by side with the color correct, the print after color timing and the color timing data.
No, but there was no. But there's no.
There was
side-by-side
no.
of
This is
digital
film. This is
photography.
digital.
Yeah.
But it's
I'm so interested.
You
You guys are both people who have made films, and you are also, of the three of us, I'm always the one who's like, it didn't really bother me, the digital, and you guys are always the ones, especially you, Alex, but both of you are always the ones who are like, oh, it looks so video-y.
But I will say that this documentary doesn't really. It's not really about the things that we brought up on the show.
It's about a lot of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets into special effects. It really has a broad.
Well, but
topic.
I think, and this is what I'll say, which is I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the sort of nuts and bolts history of how things progressed, and it also reminded me of things. And there were moments where I was like, oh wow, that was actually what was happening. I just saw that movie and was like, oh, they shot it on video. Interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why they shot it on video, that's what they did. And some movies, it's like, oh wow, that was on video, interesting. And like the fact that they were like the Slumdog Millionaire was the first movie shot on digital that won for best cinematography. It's like, wow, really? I feel like that would have happened more recently than, or more,
a while ago.
farther in the past. Yeah, less recently than then. But I really enjoyed it, and I liked the nuts and bolts. And what I was going to say about the special effects thing was, you started to understand why that process happened, where you went, here's Star Wars. We're taking a film, and then we're taking the back plate film, and then we're taking the TIE Fighter film, and then the special explosion film, and then this film, and then that film, and we're putting them all together and trying to send light through it, and that actually degrades the image. Right. Physically making it that way lowers the image. So then they went, well, how do we get this into a way that doesn't degrade it? And that's when they started going, well, we scan it into a computer, we can do it in the computer and then put it back out on film, now it doesn't degrade. Well, then you start to go, okay, so shooting it is on film, showing it is on film, but all the other shit is done inside a computer. Okay, and that's when Lucas for episode 2 was like, well, this is stupid. Why don't I just get rid of that on film and we just put it into the computer straight off? You know what I mean? And hearing the different filmmakers talk about the progression of the digital camera, of how the camera first was made to look like an old movie camera, and they were sort of like, well, why would I not, it's like, no, that's the negative. It's like, no, it's a hard drive. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? and then into the progression of the companies like Red that came out that were like, we're just starting from scratch because digital's cool, filmmaking's cool, you know what I mean? And the sort of, you know, but also hearing people like Christopher Nolan and Christopher Nolan's DP talk about, you know, wanting to stay with film and, you know, the desire to do that, it really made me come out with complete mixed feelings about it.
Well, that's what I like the most about it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you,
It doesn't take a stand, really.
On two fronts, I'm a fan of this movie. On the front of the discussion that's happening, which I'll get to in a second, and on the front of it's just a really well-made documentary. And it is a very comprehensive documentary. It's a well-structured documentary. And like my favorite documentaries, and this might be an odd one to compare it to, but it reminded me of Dear Zachary, or not Dear Zachary, Capturing the Freedmans, where there's this debate at the center of this. There's this sort of mystery that we're investigating. Like, what's better, film or digital? Is digital good or bad? Is the central question of this. And like Capturing the Freedmans, I found myself completely sure of one side and then completely sure of the other side.
Yep.
And that is a wonderfully fair-handed and exciting narrative path to be weaving through your documentary, that I can be given this evidence and then be shown new evidence on the other side and be as equally persuaded each time and have, you know, both arguments as well founded and as well backed up as they can be. That is great. And I was interested throughout. It had wonderful, solid, high quality examples for each thing that it was trying to say.
And I loved when they showed the movie that they were talking about the technology for. And
Yes.
you were like, okay,
Right.
I got a mental, I
got-
know where I was when I watched that movie, and I know how I felt about that movie.
Yeah.
Now I know that that was on film, or now I know that that was shot on
And
digital.
they got the best people to talk about the thing. I mean,
The people.
You want James Cameron talking about the
Yep.
camera he invented. You
Yep.
want George Lucas talking about the camera he invented. You know, these are the people that you want talking about these things. And it's not just those. I mean, those are sort of the biggest names, but there's much more lesser names that are as equally important.
Yeah, all of the cinematographers that are, you know,
Yes.
Oscar award-winning cinematographers that have only worked on film, talking about the progress of digital and all these things. The woman editor who edited all these amazing films and then was starting to go into digital and was like, I don't know shit about computers. She was like, I can't use a computer.
Now,
I will say-
So
she was
great.
so sweet.
Because it
I
was
remember
like,
who
think about that job, who's
Yeah.
like the top-notch editor and then goes, I
But no,
don't
she
use
didn't.
computers.
I've been
No, but she
outdated.
did. Doesn't she?
She does
Moment.
still
She's like,
use
she
it.
did it.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other people that are take very staunch.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to mention too the fact that the content itself is, you know, I about a third of the way through the movie, I was like, oh no, I'm going to be like Dan and Alex now, because this is pointing out to me the differences that to my more casual eye.
Did it visually? Because that's what I was starting to say up front. I
Not
was like,
visually,
I don't
they
think
spelled it
ever
out.
taught-
I mean,
right.
like in the whole
But it
sequence when
doesn't
they talk
depict-
about Collateral, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and like why Michael Mann made the choice to shoot on, like no one ever stepped me through that before and pointed out the benefits that like why he made that choice. Like the guy sat down and went, Collateral looks exactly like Michael Mann wanted it to look. He did not compromise by going digital. He shot on digital because that was the best way to make this movie. And then here's why. And I went, okay, I get it now. I understand it on a different level than I did before. And that's sort of a double-edged sword, because it's a little like you know, seeing behind the curtain, and you know, now I sort of see why you guys are always persnickety about
But here's
that
the
kind
thing,
of
and
stuff.
this is where I think you're going to say, Dan, which is this movie actually isn't about the quality debate of film
Right.
versus video. It's about
For a second, this one says
for a second
something,
somebody.
but, yeah.
But then it's just that's how that guy responded. It's
Yeah.
really about what is digital?
Yeah.
Where did it come from? Why is it here?
But
And
it's
how did
coming
it
out of-
become? How did?
So it wasn't like a visual
Here's the big
comparison,
deal
that's
about.
the thing.
Here's what I really want to say this about this movie. This is why this is the cool thing about this flick. This is why, even if you aren't a cinephile or in films, or why this would be interesting to you, is because we are at a turning point historically in terms of technology, where this could be happening in music. Someone could have made the documentary about the MP3 versus the CD. or the Apple something versus the something, and this documentary is being
Could have been about the something versus the something.
This
guys.
is a movie being made right at the turning point where we now have the wherewithal to acknowledge we're on a wave that's cresting or whatever, you know? Whereas most often documentaries about the Civil War or about World War II or whatever, any
No
Ken
one knew
Burns
the Civil War was
documentary-
a big deal when it was
no,
happening.
but they're made about.
Yeah, but they didn't make a documentary about
They
it.
weren't making a documentary then at the time.
Right. It's called books.
Because we had film, not digital photography. That's called books. So anyway, a lot of documentaries are made in hindsight. This is happening right now, and you're able to we're able to see, okay, we're tracking it. How did it happen?
There are a
And
lot of answers that are don't know yet.
Yeah.
But the cool
we don't
thing is
quite
that
know
it-
when it takes over, but there's this issue of everyone is admitting it's going to take over. Digital is going to take over. But there's this cool thing where like seeing, because I identify with a lot of what was said about using it for the color scanning the film in digitally. That was such an improvement, I think, in terms of what we could do visually with film.
Undoubtedly.
And although some people might disagree, but I love that happened. And as soon as that happened, they go, well, maybe projectors should be. And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I just want to shoot on film, but let's do all these other processes digitally because that stuff makes it better. Whereas film still looks better than right. But it's like those things being better. That's the slippery slope, you know, of like, oh, well,
slippity slope.
the slippity slope.
Slippity-dippity-dooper.
That starts to go like, okay, well, that's better, and digital is going to be better. It's like, well, wait, but you have to
slope.
start it. Someone's got to do it. Like we all didn't. Everyone agrees. Episode 2 did not look that good, and I think the Matrix sequels. I always say about the Burley Brawl, the CG effects, the computer effects in the Matrix sequels looked terrible.
Yeah.
But someone's got to make those crappy effects for us to then have Avatar years later.
baby
Someone
steps.
had to start that.
Yeah.
You know. So are you going to be a part of that or not?
And the cool thing about this movie is that it comes at it from every craftsperson's perspective. It talks about the editor's perspective. It talks about the cinematographer's perspective. It talks about the actor's perspective. It talks about the director's perspective. It talks about the projectionist's I mean, everybody that goes into the process between I got an idea for a movie and I'm watching it in the theater, everybody is affected, and digital as it is in its manifestations across all of that production assembly line.
Yeah.
This movie talks about, which is, you're right. It's not about what the title suggests.
Right. It's not a side by side. This is film. This is digital, which is better.
It's not.
They never do that.
Never do that. Right. It is more about how is this affecting every single step along the way, and how are people's lives adjusting to that.
And the key thing, what you said, it's not just I thought it was digital photography versus film, but it's digital technology versus analog technology. You know.
So what did you guys come? I mean, you said you were muddled at the end, as was I. Did you feel like this?
I just was.
movie
I was mixed.
Had a thesis statement?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, I think my takeaway for the thesis statement was it's happening and it's exciting. New is exciting. If 100 years got us to here with film, where's 100 years going to get us with digital?
It certainly seems like that what the movie is saying is this is inevitable and there's nothing we can do to stop it.
It's not just that I found interesting too. It's more philosophical stuff that I always think about now, especially with the internet and YouTube, is that now there's more people. On one hand, we go, now there's more people. There could be more. Richard Linklater got his money together, got his friends together, made this movie Slacker that became this or Kevin Smith with Clerks or whatever, or Robert Rodriguez with. Now we can have 1 million of those guys.
We do.
We do. We currently do that. I mean, I'm a part of that.
I thought.
But I sometimes feel like, boy, it was so much more of an achievement to have gotten there when it wasn't so easy. But on the flip side,
everybody feels that about every profession through the history of time.
right, as things progress, right. But there's also something interesting.
Back in my day,
there's just gonna be a lot more crap happening.
Wasn't that what
And
De Laurentiis was saying?
Right, that's what I'm.
Yeah, and that's already happening. I mean, I love the internet at times.
But
and
I
hate
love
the internet
that-
at times.
If you like this show, you're gonna like this
Yeah,
documentary.
it's worth it.
Really
It's so worth a
seeing.
watch.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
Yep.
All right, everybody, be sure to stick around. We're going to be answering one of your Twitter questions right after this. But first, we want to thank our sponsor, Carbonite.com. Carbonite online backup is automatic cloud backup for your computer files at your home office or your small business. Just set it up once, and Carbonite will protect your computer files so that you can stay focused on running your business. There's no hardware required. With Carbonite, getting lost files back is super easy. Your employees can even access their backed up files on their smartphones or iPads with the free Carbonite app. Carbonite is the better backup plan for your home office or small business, you can start your free trial at carbonite.com with the offer code TRS today, and you'll get those gorgeous mythical creatures, the two Bomos.
Ooh,
AKA
Bomos.
the 2 bonus months. If you decide to buy, that's carbonite.com, and the offer code for the mythical creature of Tubomo is TRS.
I just now got the layer of thing that was happening that I didn't get before. Carbonite, obviously we get why it's called Carbonite, but it puts your stuff in Cloud City.
Oh,
Look at
interesting.
that. That's where Carbonite happens.
Oh, so it's sort of a double entendre.
Well, it's a more triple now, or quadruple. or-
Quadruple. All right, people, we'll see you tomorrow.
Join us tomorrow for our review of the game Dust and Elysian Tale.
Today's Twitter question sent in with the hashtag TRSQ was sent in by Gary Taylor, who's at GTaylor83, and he asks, he claims he has a great TRSQ, and then he proceeds to follow that shit up. He says, why is it so hot? Which is a question I've been asking a lot.
The answer is we're in Los Angeles, where it is so effing
And we have
hot.
fruit.
Well, we also have no AC,
Yeah,
and we have no,
It's a cage.
We have lights.
We have a
We're
box.
in a tight room.
There's very hot
Small
lights.
room.
Yep.
The temperature has been ungodly in almost all of the country, in case you've been under a rock lately.
Or a nice cool rock, hopefully.
Yeah. And there's nothing to disperse the heat.
When you're watching an actual television show that you're used to watching, like a show like ours that might be a talk show, those studios
Are ice cold.
right.
And they're
'Cause they
ice
have
cold with
ACs.
giant ACs, and then they turn the ACs off, and then they shoot a little bit, and then they turn the giant
I wish
ACs
we were in
on.
one of those places right
I
now.
remember with the screensavers, I had, because I kept going when I first got the job at the screensavers, I walked in and I was like, oh, is there not AC in this studio? And the stage director, or the floor manager was like, oh, yeah, it's on. And I was like, oh, well, it's not really cold. And he was like, I'll make it cold. And he was like, I'll get it cold for you, Alex. And I was like, as cold as it'll go. And he was like, it's gonna be ice tomorrow. And I was like, as cold as it can go. And I came in the next day and I was like, oh, are you gonna turn down the AC? Because it wasn't that cold. And he was like, oh, I turned it, and I was like, as low as it will go. Literally, that was a week. By the end of the week, the camera guys had ponchos on, like big parkas
I'd be so
and all
mad.
that stuff.
I'd be like framing you. Like,
Yeah.
Everybody always says, you guys look like you just woke up or something. It's not that. It's that we're all
Well,
sticky
there's
and
a couple
gross.
times
It's the
that-
summer, there's a few months in the summer where we don't look our
Also, I woke up like 20 minutes ago.
Also, Dan
Yeah.
sleeps.